Alright, now we're going to talk about hydraulic heads, removing and reinstalling them. Probably the first thing you want to do, if you want to make it easy on yourself, is you loosen up all of your injector hold down bolts and pop them loose. Don't break shit off, don't take the injector lines off the injectors, don't take the return lines off. Just loosen up the hold down bolts and pop them loose with a pry bar. You don't have to take them out. And the purpose of that is just to make the motor easier to roll over. Because these things have a pretty high compression, as most of you know. They can be a real pain to roll the motor over and get everything lined up where you want it. Now, down here, you see right there are timing marks on your balancer. There's timing marks for the old LDS 427, the LD 465, and the LDT and LDS 465 motors. So you want to use the appropriate timing mark for your build engine. And let me see, I might have to get a flashlight. If you look carefully, you can see a pointer right there. That's the pointer you want to line up your mark on, whichever mark you're going to use. Now, once you've got that done, keep in mind, those timing marks will line up twice. So you can line it up and be 180 degrees out of where you want to be. But there's one surefire way to tell if you're right or not. And I'm about to show you that. So here we have our same destroyed pump. It was given to me. And if you've got your timing marks lined up on the motor where you want them to be, you'll want to remove this little 4-bolt cover on the advance assembly. And in there, you see that white painted mark? It's a score on the wheel, and it's got white paint on it usually. Sometimes they've got a shitload of white paint all over it, but you're always going to be able to see that mark. Then you've got a pointer. To pull the hydraulic head off, that mark does not need to be lined up with this pointer. You only need to be able to see it in that window. If you can see it in that window, then you're on the right revolution on the motor. You're not 180 degrees out. So I've already pulled this just to make it easier to show you. But see that half moon cut on top of that gear? Half of it is, of course, broken off because somebody tried to remove the hydraulic head and didn't have it lined up right. So, damn it. I wish I had 3 hands. Make this a lot easier. When you're removing and reinstalling the head, it should, once again, wish I had 3 hands. I just did this a minute ago. Damn it! Make a fool out of me now. There. You have a red tooth on that gear. And that red tooth should be just in front of the mark. Some pumps, the mark likes to be right on that pointer, that little cast-in pointer on top of the housing there. Some like to be just behind. The vast majority of them like to be right where you see this one. So when you've got that lined up properly, the head lifts right out. And the reason is that half moon cut locks in on top of that gear right there. So it will not let it come out unless you've got the mark right where it needs to be. I mean, it has to be perfect. That's why they're such a pain sometimes. So when your hydraulic head is in here and you pull your shutoff cover, where'd it go? The first thing you're going to see is your fuel lever with that little bridge plate right here screwed on over it right there. There will be safety wire. There should be safety wire. When you put it back together, there better be safety wire. So you pull that off. You pull this little Jesus clip right here. Will be around this governor rod, holding it into that hole on the fuel lever. You pull that off, you pull this out, and check the end. Make sure that this little tit is still on there. If you drop it in there, you're going to have to fish it out. And definitely make sure you don't drop it on the ground, because you will never find it. You get that out, got your mark lined up, and it'll come right out. Installation is reverse or removal. When you put it back in, make sure that that red tooth is right where it was when you pulled it, because you can get it a tooth off, or 2 teeth off, or 3 teeth off, and it may run, but it'll run like shit. When you put your fuel lever back in, that is the hardest part of the whole deal. You've got to have it, in my experience, let's see if I can once again do this with 2 hands and not 3, right about there. And you need to make sure that that tit is perfectly flat. See what I'm getting at? So on the rotation of the arm, it is about as low as you can get it, because that fuel plate in there, you've got to get that tit perfectly centered in that groove, or it won't engage, it won't screw down, you'll have a runaway, or it won't start. When you get this in, and I can actually show you this now, because everybody wonders, well, how do you know if the tit actually engaged? Well, when you have it installed and the tit is actually engaged like it needs to be, you'll be able to turn this fuel lever about this far and it will stop. And you'll turn it over about this far and it'll stop. That's how you know it's properly engaged and everything is like it should be. Then you can put your bridge plate back on, screw it down, put your safety wire in, fight this and get it back in. It's always a fight, believe me. And once you get that in, make sure that this moves freely. This governor rod will give it a little bit of spring pressure, so you should be able to push it back this way and let it go, and it will go back to 7 o'clock where it should be. And, you know, work it. Make sure it moves. If you've got the bridge plate screws too tight, it will lock that up, and you'll crank it and it'll be either full throttle and won't come off of it, or it won't start at all, or it won't do anything no matter what you do to the fuel pedal. It'll just idle at a certain RPM. Put your fuel cover back on, make sure the gasket's there, it's in good shape, it's not leaking, make sure all your injector lines are tight, and crank it. Good to go.